Following on from my earlier videos regarding my one-handed saxophone modification, I've spent some time playing the instrument. It plays pretty well. There were a number of aspects with the original design that I was not happy with. In particular, the adjustment of the solenoids. They were attached from the underside of the plate, which meant the only way to position them in relation to the key and to ensure that the key closed correctly, the only way to do that was to take the whole plate away from the saxophone and make the adjustment and put it back and try it, and it was very difficult and very timely process to get it positioned correctly. Another issue that I found was for the C and D sharp key, because the solenoid was positioned too low, it meant that when you pressed the key, the pressure was enough to flex this plate upwards, which wasn't an issue with the playing. However, what happened eventually was it was causing a little flex in this area of the plate too, which meant gradually there was a little gap developing under the pad for D, and that little gap was causing an air leak, which meant then anything below D was not sounding correctly or would not play at all. What I've done is I've created threaded holes at the front here, and I've put 3 rows for each solenoid, and I've put an angle in this plate to prevent it from flexing upwards. And you'll also see that the actual upright has been removed, and it now has a detachable upright, which I will explain in a moment. So first of all, for the position of the solenoids, as I said, it used to be that they screwed the solenoid screwed in here, so they were fixed from the underneath, which meant positioning them backwards and forwards like this was very difficult. So what I've done is I developed these little plates, and the solenoid attaches like this from the underside with these countersunk screws, and then the plate itself attaches, and then the plate itself can actually move backwards and forwards with the solenoid attached. So this is the solenoid attached to the plate, and then the plate can just sit on here, and it attaches with some Allen headed screws. These are M3. So there you have the solenoid attached, and I can then move it backwards and forwards a range of about 1 centimetre, or I can bring it back to these next set of holes to give it further range. And I just simply then, with it in place, I just tighten it down from the front to secure it. The next modification that I made to the design was to make the upright for the C natural and D sharp solenoid, to make that bracket removable. Issues for this were that basically you could not fit the saxophone in the case with this attached. You could not close the lid. So being able to remove this, you can now fold it out of the way and then close the lid of the saxophone. The other reason for making it like this also is that I can now easily adjust it forwards and backwards along this plane. So with the bracket secured, there's quite a lot of strength now in this arm with those angles in place. I also took the opportunity to lengthen the slots to adjust the solenoid height. So I've got a much greater range now to adjust the solenoid in that sense. The plate itself still attaches to the saxophone in the same way. It screws to the brass plate that covers the lower B flat and B natural holes. It simply attaches through these 4 countersunk screws through that plate and then secures to this secondary plate from the underneath. And then the final modification for this design was to properly incorporate the PCB. Previously I just had the PCB secured with some double-sided foam tape. So what I've done is I've made these 4 threaded holes. Again, these are M3, and these will then accept the screws from the PCB, and then the PCB is actually mounted on some spacers and you just screw them down to the plate like so. So this is the whole unit assembled now. So the solenoids are on, the PCB is on, and it's attached to this mounting plate, which is the cover from the saxophone for the B natural and B flat keys. So I just attach that now back to the saxophone. Once it's in place, I can adjust the position of these solenoids so that they just close the key with just enough pressure, and then once those are adjusted, I can adjust their holding voltage with each of the 5 variable resistors. And so here you have the full assembly now attached on the saxophone. It looks much neater, it's a lot tighter fit, and the keys certainly seem to be more responsive now. While I was reattaching the board and the solenoids to the saxophone, I did have a play around with trying to adjust the solenoids so that I did not get the tap 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 sound when the solenoid reached its full stroke. I adjusted the solenoids until the tap sound just about stopped. The operation was nice and quiet, however I could not get the holding voltage to a level where the solenoids would stay in position. So there obviously seems to be something with the design of the solenoid whereby it will only hold at its full stroke. So maybe this is something to focus on in the future. But for now it's working very well again. I'm quite happy with it.